What are your checks and balances? Like mine's writing it out,
Yeah,
and I've always like, let's turn
journal.
the page. I journal it. What are your checks and
I'm not a
balances?
big. I'm not. I don't really have time to write it down, to be honest, because my schedule is like so crazy, and I'm not a big in writing. I will never read it again, to be honest, if I write anything now. So I don't. But I do have things. It's like I almost like look at my life as like a business, right? So I have these boxes that I gotta look, and like, am I fulfilling these in order to get the end result? So I was like, I'll have my physical, my mental, my emotional, and my spiritual, right? So my physical will be like, am I sleeping well? Am I eating good food? Am I eating enough food, which is an issue for me most of the time because of how my day is? Am I working out? Are my workouts quality workouts? If they're starting to, if it's one day that's bad, that's okay. But if it becomes the normal, not the exception to be bad, then that's a problem. Like my mentor is like, how do I feel? Am I getting triggered easily when people say something that annoys me? Or because I'm not like a bad mood kind of person, I'm usually pretty like steady. So if I find myself getting really irritated really easy versus just like, oh, whatever, then that's a problem. Or am I feeling sad? Am I feeling happy? Now, my emotional kind of, it's kind of like a, it's hard to say where the mental and emotional goes, but like, am I feeling like overwhelmed all the time? And how are these, like, am I happy most of my day, or am I just sad most of my day? Am I stressed? And my spiritual is like, am I having enough time with God? Am I having enough prayer time? Or like, am I feeling the presence? Right? Am I be busy,
Can you
but
listen?
am I feeling the presence enough that I can listen?
And
And
I
if
think
I
what you're
can't,
saying,
yeah,
sorry, I think what you're saying though is something that a lot of us don't have as easily. You're very self aware. I can go down some really deep spirals before I realize, I don't have that ability to just be in the moment and be so self aware and check my boxes. I wish I did. But I tell you all the time,
yeah.
I don't seem to make progress very quickly. I do stay stuck a lot, and then I have to work really hard, to get out of it. I admire though that you do have, kind of almost a system for saying, okay, I'm not moving forward. And is it because of this, or is it because of this? And you look at yourself. For me, I do have to kind of get quiet, look within, meditate, be prayerful, and write and figure out what in the world's going on in my crazy head and heart to get me out of it.
I think for me it was, I think big part of it, I think I became very self-aware in the last few years. And I think getting sick, it helped me because I had to be aware of what was going on in my body so I could advocate for myself.
Right.
And I truly think that helped. But also being on my own, I had to figure out things. And I can't, like, I just can't have excuses for myself for too long because the consequences hit me really fast. So I can't allow myself to just be lazy because then I'm gonna get sick again, right? So like I haven't been eating sugar. I'm like a sweets person, so like I know it's like hard right now, but I haven't been doing it because I was doing too much. I had to call myself out. Nobody's watching what I'm doing. Nobody's like, oh, you eating bad. Nobody knows what I eat when I go home. There's. But I have to like check that for myself. Like I know it's not good for me. It's not good for my lupus. I have to cut it out. I have to look at this stuff. And it's important that you become aware because it's your responsibility to make yourself happy. I think in the moment that I took that power of like, my job is to make myself happy versus expecting other people to make me
That's
happy,
a very powerful point.
then I have to be aware of what makes me happy. And I think one of the big drivers of me wanting to move again was I realized I had certain things that were not happening for me. Like it was my schedule and, there's like these little things, but when you put them together, it becomes a lot. And it was affecting how I was feeling about myself and about my life and the direction I was going. And I've tried to adjust things, and I realize even with the adjustments, I'm not getting anywhere. So I'm like in the same circle nonstop. So I'm like, okay, I got to change big.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to, sometimes for me, that means I'm going to move to another city because I kind of like that. And restart. I'm going to start fresh, and I'm going to try to look at everything that I did that was playing against me or my goals, and I'm going to try to redo it. And I'm going to rewrite that. But I don't see that as a bad thing. A lot of people see that as like, oh, you fail here, so you're going to try to run away. And
But you're not making this move out of failure. You're making this move to go even further in your career.
yes, but I think a lot of people see change as a like need because you failed something.
So I'm curious, as you're kind of guiding us through your checks and balances, this another big life move, you talk about putting yourself in check about happiness. Um, will you tell us what the little things are, the simple things in life that really make you happy?
Yeah. I think for me, it's like I don't want to feel like I'm just going through the clock and checking boxes. Okay, I woke up, I got the coffee, I got this. I want to feel joy. I don't want to constantly feel like I'm stressed, that I'm like just running against the clock. I want to be able to wake up, drink my coffee, read my Bible, not feeling like I'm rushing through it. I want to be able to just be quiet and not feel like I'm in constant chaos. It's just the little moments. I'm not talking, it's not about money. It's not about things. I want to be able to have a moment where I just sit and just feel like still. That makes me happy.
Mm-hmm.
And just feel like I can just look at my life and be like, you know, I work hard, but I can have that balance where I can just be with myself and feel good with my energy, with how I feel physically, and just have joy. Does that answer your question?
I think so. I'm just sitting here thinking about what is joy. How do you get that joy? Because that's a big word, and that's a lot
I
to
know.
reach for. And the other thing you said that I find curious, because I think it must lead to other things in your life, is I don't want to feel chaos, because chaos obviously makes you unhappy.
So I think it's like I'm not attached to things. Or so like for me, my how I measure my happiness is like, am I just like in this like sense of calmness? And I think that's more of a subjective thing where I can like kind of level where I am. Am I super stressed out, or like every awakened moment I'm just like, did I get this done? Did I get that done? And I'm just checking boxes. I don't want to feel like that. If I'm at work and I'm doing stuff, then okay, but I want to be able to turn it off when I get home. When I can turn it off, that's already like a red light going off for me, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But how about you? What makes you happy?
You always turn the tables on me.
Yeah.
I'd have to backtrack a little bit to make sense of the answer. Um, I thought I had it all. I thought I had the world by the tail for a period of time in my life. I had this amazing man I was married to, and we had such a good time together. We had these two beautiful children. I mean, we had all the mess that every family has with teenage boys, and
Yeah.
I don't know, parties that were thrown that we came home to. There's wild, crazy stuff that happens with kids. And I thought I had financial security. I thought I was in a good spiritual place. I felt like, and I had work. I had so much purpose. I had two businesses that I was madly running all the time, but it was all working. And then, like I told with my grandmother's story, it was gone in a split second. And I think I also have talked about how my definitions of success, and I could probably interchange that with happiness. My definitions of success today are not, or happiness. My definition of success and happiness today is so far from what it was 4 years ago. One of the hardest things I've struggled with and I'm not quite out of it, but I'm a long way down the path. I had been married to one person for 29 years. He was my best friend. I didn't know how to be alone. And the loneliness overwhelmed me. And I sat in it a long time. And that's why I'm so intent on the show to try to give tools if you're lonely, if you're in despair, if you're in pain, because I sat in it way too long. I have, I'm right at the 4-year mark. I've learned to be alone a lot better. I've learned, and this, it's so funny. I've learned the power of friendship in a way I didn't know it. I'll give you a good analogy for it. I was listening to this interview that Oprah did with Michelle Obama at the very end of her last book tour, and they're sitting there on the stage. I can't remember what city they were in, and Michelle Obama talked about part of her survival journey as the wife of a president, now, doing all that she's done and suffering incredible discrimination and not really wanting to be in that role. It was his dream, not her dream, all those things, what kept her going? How did she get through? Where were her checks and balances? She used the greatest phrase. She said, I had my kitchen table. Well, her kitchen table, what she meant by that was she had a core group of friends that she could bounce things off of no matter what. She could trust them, ride or die. And she has kept that kitchen table of friends. That has emerged in my life in a way that I didn't have it before James, because he was
your kitchen table.
He was most of my kitchen table. And over the last 4 years, I've leaned so heavily into a small group of people. Some are family, some are friends, most are women, and a few guys. And they've taught me a different kind of friendship. They've taught me, and I mean, it's an everyday sort of thing with me. Somebody's reaching out to me and supporting me and helping me, and now I have enough strength to give it back. But I do have this core group of people that I don't know how to get through without. And it's the little things, like I'll say things to our listeners. Just text somebody if it's all you can do in a day, and just reach out by text to somebody. It seems so little, but I do that every day. Every day Marie texts me and I text her back, and that's a grounding. Almost every single day I talk to my aunt, who's only 4 years older than me, my grandmother's child, who was 4 when I was born. And she's a rock. She knows when I'm up, she knows when I'm down. And she'll say, you need to get a good book. You're not very happy right now. You need to be reading something. Or she's like, go get out and look at the bird. She'll just say these little things.
Yeah.
But my happiness has begun to bubble up, I think, through my kitchen table.
I love that.
It's one portion of it. My kids are good, and I didn't know if we'd ever be good again. I didn't know if those boys could survive what happened to us as a family. And at first, I don't think any of us knew if we'd make it. And those boys are so dang strong right now, and they hold me up, and they give me so much joy. When my kids are good, I'm good, kind of. That's happiness. My spiritual journey has certainly taken on a whole different look in the last 4 years. I've always been a spiritual person. I come from a family of big faith and really messy. But especially the women in my family have always, had big faith, have been prayers. My grandmother was a woman of unbelievable faith. And she sang all the time. She had the most beautiful voice. But my spiritual journey in the last 4 years, I've been mad at God. I have doubted him. I've done all the things of why, how could this happen? And yet, somehow in the midst of it, I felt the presence of a living God. Mm-hmm. Sorry. Thank you. It's been so palpable through this journey. And so there's so much, so much peace and so much happiness that comes with, I can lean into my faith journey in a way I couldn't. I was always the doubting Thomas, though I was always prayerful. If you can imagine those two things. Um, but that's a piece of my life that has become very important to me, that I spend time in, that I start my day with. I start with intention. I start prayerfully. Um, so I guess happiness today looks like not being alone, having these deep and abiding friendships. It's my children. It's my spiritual life.
And it's like you have this like sense of like when you're describing this, I can. It's not something that you can see it necessarily, but like with your description, it becomes very real, right? This joy, this peace, this love for this group of people, it becomes very palpable.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think we all know inside what that means to us individually. And you have to have that gauge of like when you drifting away from that and the things that are going to drift you away. And when you like having thoughts that are limiting you from like, can I have that again? Like you have to hold yourself accountable to those and be aware of the things you're doing. If you just stop answering those messages, eventually they might just be like, I don't know.
You said something a minute ago that made me think of something that happened to me last week. A friend of mine recently lost her son, and I went to the funeral. And when I got back, I thought I was doing great. I thought I was fine. I haven't been in therapy for a couple of years. Just needed time to just be with myself and let all the therapy of the past years work on me, And I kind of wanted to, I think, have a break and distance and figure out myself for myself. Anyway, I got back from that funeral of that young man, and it triggered all the things I thought I had overcome. Limiting beliefs come back again and again, and we have to keep working on them. And the thing that it was shaking me. I couldn't get past the questions of what could I have done? What could I have done to keep him from taking his life? What did I not notice? Where was I not there? And it was eating me up. And I thought, okay, I got to get help. So that's a checks and balances for me.
Yeah.
It's been 2 years. I found a therapist who does EMDR, and I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but desensitization and something. But so I went last week, first time, and she said, what do you want to work on? And I said, I'm stuck. I'm stuck in this. What could I have done to have helped my husband? And she said, okay, and she gives you these 2 pulses to put in your hands. It's rewiring your brain. So she said, just think about that for a minute. So I'm thinking about it. And she said, okay, now what are you thinking about? And I said, well, I'm thinking about that there was so much I didn't know that was going on with him that I couldn't have known to help. And she said, well, that's really good. You've made a shift. Now you're not blaming yourself. You're seeing that there was a lot going on that you didn't know. And so then she said, take the pulses back again. Let's go deeper. And this took more than a few minutes. It was about 45 minutes. At the end of the session, and I thought we had done well, and I was like, okay, I can walk away from this. I'm feeling better. I'm breathing. I'm more peaceful. I'm not sitting in blame and shame. And she said, let's go just a little bit deeper with this. And I'm holding the 2 things. And she said, think about, I want you to see where this takes you. Think about what he gave you in life. And I went, oh, that's so easy. James was, and I'm not trying to deify him because he had all kinds of issues like we all do, but he was truly the kindest human being I've ever known. I think anybody who knew him, friends, family, would say that man, it was just unbelievable how kind, how thoughtful he was across the board. That never went away. It wasn't like it was a 2-sided thing. He drenched our family in kindness. And so she said, so now what do you think? And I said, well, I'm just thinking about how kind he was. And she said, that's it. What he gave you was his kindness to carry forward in life, not blaming yourself. And I mean, that just turned me on a dime. I was like, I got it. I can go out of here. I can shift my story from sitting in blame, shame, to I can take his kindness and I can push that out into the world. That for me is an example of maybe I didn't so deliberately go to rewrite the story, but I knew I needed help.
Yeah.
I totally believe in therapy, and I'm just starting the EMDR journey, but it's working for me. So I would encourage anybody to explore therapies that are helpful to them. Um, but it certainly has helped me so much just in the last week and a half.
But it's like you were grabbing to like find something that was wrong with you.
Mhm. That's a limiting belief.
Yeah,
It's my
like you were
fault.
trying to put that on you
Mhm.
because you're trying to control the situation as if you had any, like
I
he
had
was
no
gonna
control.
do what he
Right.
was gonna do regardless. If you try to stop, like you wouldn't be able to control 100% of the time. You wouldn't be able to like watch it 24/7, even if you knew things. Like you couldn't do it. There's things you just can't control. But you were trying to grab onto that one part of like being the blame versus looking, yes, it's terrible that happened, but there was all this other stuff that you have been able to experience with them and your kids and the kindness.
Yeah,
And we
it was
hope,
shifting it of I
yes,
can't bring him back, but what of his life can I take forward that he would want in the world? It was such a major shift in my
yes.
thinking and then in my heart.
But it's also like how many things in your life, in my life, or anybody's life where we get and we just hold on to trying to blame ourselves,
Mhm.
right? For
And then
things,
we're in shame.
shame and guilt for all the things that we could have, we should have, or oh, if this was different. But what happened in the past is it's done. And how can you take what happened, learn something, and then switch and then move forward, right? So that's, I think that checks and balances. Like when I say you got to look at how your life is not to criticize yourself. You
Absolutely.
have to take ownership
Oh,
of
I
what
totally
is,
agree.
like, if you're one of those people that go out and like, go crazy, lash off on other people, and you're mean, and you're, like, you got to take responsibility for that, right? But if you're trying to live your life and you're best and you're kind and you're still going to make mistakes. You got to take ownership for those moments and the things that you're doing that are not working for you, right? How can you do different?
Thank you for all that you're sharing. It reminds me of something that's been very important to me in my life, even before this last really difficult 4-year journey. Anybody who knows me knows I love poetry, and poetry takes me places, and it helps build me up and teach me what I need to know. And I give a big shout out right now to Padre Gotuma on the On Being Poetry podcast, because he just introduces me. I don't know what it does for others, but he introduces me to so many great thoughts that help me move forward. But so I have a favorite poet. She died a few years ago. Her name's Mary Oliver. And she wrote this poem, 10,000 Things. And at the very end of the poem, she asks a question. And as I look back in my life, I wish I had that question tattooed on my hand so it was in front of me all of the time. But the question she asked was, tell me, what will you do with your one wild and precious life? And I say, if I am asking myself that question every day, what will I do? Because I only have this one life and I love that it's wild and it is precious. How do I live for today? How do I rewrite the story to get unstuck, to move forward, to be my best self, to live the life I desire? So I would tell you, as our listeners, and thank you so much for being with us today, to carry that Mary Oliver quote close in your heart and in your mind, and ask yourself the question as you're looking at your life, as you're wanting to turn the page and rewrite your story. Ask, tell me, what will you do with your one wild and precious life? Natalia, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank
Always
you.
being so vulnerable and so kind to share your story with our listeners. Thank
Thank
you.
you, my dear. It's always my pleasure.